So you're just crunching and scrunching.
I enjoy doing it, actually. This is a good, at the end of the day, you have a little frustrations, you can come and make some sauerkraut, give it a little massage. But what I'm doing is I'm helping it break down those cell walls to release the juices. And you can see even now, as we're going, it's starting to make brine.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
dripping.
you got juice. Wow.
Yeah, it's that quick.
So if you have kids, this is a great way to involve them in the kitchen. You give them some chopped cabbage and a big bowl and put a little salt in it and then have them do whatever they want to do, and you've got a few minutes to continue to do something else in the kitchen. And the other cool thing is, you know, when kids are part of making it, they're going to be part of watching this food develop and change, and then they're going to enjoy eating it as well, and it's so good for them.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. My guests today are Kirsten and Christopher Shockey. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Who are the authors of this gorgeous book, Fermented Vegetables. And catch the delightful, delicious subtitle. Creative recipes for fermenting 64 vegetables and herbs in krauts, kimchis, brined pickles, chutneys, relishes, and pastes. That's a mouthful.
It is.
And I want to add, not only is it a mouthful, it is a gorgeous book full of pictures and recipes and ideas and people. I mean, you made it chock full. Thank you. Tell us,
Thank you.
I want to start by, give us a little bit of story. How did you get into fermenting vegetables?
So it started at Christmas, under the Christmas tree, a long time ago, 1999. We have a homestead, and Kirsten's mom gave us a package, and she said, don't turn it over, be careful. So when we opened it up, inside was a bubbling crock of kraut. And
Kids were a little concerned.
Because it was alive and bubbling?
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
you know, the aroma.
and a
Something different.
and a copy of Sally Fallon's book. And that's what got us started.
The Nourishing Traditions
Absolutely,
book? Okay. Right. That's where I learned to ferment. Okay,
Yeah.
carry on.
And that's it. And then for the next 10 years, mostly Kirsten was making ferments in the kitchen for the kids and I. And then we tried a number of things as homesteaders to make it. We did different dairy options. We milked cows and goats. We made lots of yummy cheeses. I learned to be a cider maker, and we did hard ciders. But nothing was something, and our dream was always to work together. So that's the dream that we kept chasing. And then finally, we were giving fermented vegetables away, and people really enjoyed them. And so that's when we decided, you know, I think we're best at fermented vegetables. Let's just try that.
And what did you do? I mean, so then what? Tell us what happened with your fermented vegetables.
So then we started a business, and we built a certified kitchen onto the farmhouse, USDA certified kitchen, with his and her fermenting caves on the side, built into the hillside, because I hadn't given up the dream of being a cider maker yet. So I was still making probably 120 gallons of cider, and we were doing fermented vegetables. We did all stone crocks, so we made German crocks and Polish crocks, ungi pots.
The big stone
Yeah.
ceramic.
Yeah, and at first we were just fermenting cabbage mostly with what we were doing with the flavor instead of just plain kraut was lemon and dill or adding different herbs to the krauts themselves. And we were having a lot of fun with that, but we hadn't really had the idea of doing a bunch of vegetables yet. I was starting to add more things to the krauts, carrots and onions and garlic, but to do a fermented kraut without cabbage. That happened about 2 or 3 months into the business. We have a farmer friend named Mary, and she would have a surplus of things, and she would call me up and say, so, parsnips. Do parsnips ferment? And I'd be on the phone, I don't know. And this was before there was a lot out there on fermentation like there is now. Now you just go do a Google search on parsnips and somebody, whether it's worked or not, they've got a story or a recipe. And, you know, with most everything, it was like, well, I'm not seeing that it's going to kill us, so let's try. And we would, you know, I would try maybe 3 or 4 different things in a small batch with some parsnips, and then we'd just go for it. So Mary kept pushing my envelope of what can be fermented, and so slowly we had more crazy things at the vegetable
And so what did you
table.
do with them besides feed your kids?
This is when it was a business.
Aha, okay.
Yeah.
So we did farmers markets, we did restaurants, and all in Southern Oregon, and also in the Bend area. We did fairs, we did food festivals. We brought sauerkraut where sauerkraut had not gone before.
I like that.
And it was, yeah, so we heard a lot of stories. We introduced a lot of people to it that just felt they didn't like it until they
Well, frankly,
tasted
I
something.
didn't like sauerkraut
Ah.
until I started to make it, and I could make it milder than the commercial
Right.
sauerkrauts, because sour isn't my favorite taste.
Right.
And so I didn't know that you could have it mild or interesting.
Right.
Which I'm going to reach behind you, Kirsten. You brought, and we'll taste some of these later, some of the things that you've made that people, sounds like in your business, in the book, people would come back and give you feedback about trying these different things.
People aren't shy about feedback.
So did that tune what you put together for recipes or other things that you tried?
You know, I think everything that actually made it to the farmers market stand didn't get feedback that needed fine tuning. Mostly, I think people were just so excited about the brightness of the flavor and just what they were experiencing, and also the health benefits. I mean, honestly, people were starting to feel better when they were eating the fermented vegetables. So we had a lot of groupies that would just come every week ready for the new flavor, and they were really excited about, you know, just eating the food.
So that actually is a good segue into, tell us what a fermented food is. Let's start at 101 here. What's a fermented vegetable, or just what is fermentation?
So all the vegetables have lactic acid on them inherently, the bacteria, along with all the other bacteria that we have. You know, and what you're doing is you are encouraging this lactic acid bacteria through the process of the sodium saline environment.
From salt.
To reproduce. They eat the starches and the sugars, and they begin to reproduce and turn the environment acidic. And it's the acidity that preserves the vegetable and then also gives it the great flavors.
And so it's something that's been around for a while.
Yeah, I don't think, you did more of the history, but I don't think they actually know when the first ferment happened.
I've heard Sandor Katz talk about that they believe that the Great Wall of China included fermented vegetables to power the people as they went through. So that's one tag of when it started, but it's been around. It was the way to preserve vegetables without refrigeration or without any electricity. You're down to this, and so it's
that's one of the advantages that I see as we come into more uncertain times, say with climate, or as you point out, overabundance in some seasons of some produce is a way to preserve the nutrition, or actually enhance it, without taking the amount of energy that it takes, say, to do canning.
No, there's no, yeah, and that's a huge thing, because all these vegetables here that are fermented, to preserve them in the sense of canning, you'd need a pressure cooker, which takes quite a bit of energy.
Yeah.
And you lose flavor. I mean, the vegetables come out mush. And that's the other interesting thing. Christopher was talking about the preservation in China, but also the other thing that I read that was happening in China was salt was so expensive, and it's such an important nutrient to our bodies. And so some of the early fermentation was also to spread the flavor and give them more flavor by, you ferment the vegetables with a little bit of salt, and you're spreading that salty flavor and that nutrient for your bland rice. And so it was a good way for the people that the peasants, the people that couldn't afford the salt because it was such a high expense ingredient.
Your book has Kraut, so short for sauerkraut, which probably is a German word, all right? So we know European heritage. Kimchi. Kimchi is what, from Korea, right? What's the difference between them?
Well, making them, the only difference is that whereas with the sauerkrauts, as we'll show you, it's fresh cabbage and you're going to salt it and put it in a jar and you're going to be done. With the kimchis, what we did is we actually make a brine like you're making with pickles, and we're going to soak that maybe the night before, so the next day then we start. So the only difference is that the cabbages are pre-soaked in a brine before you're making them. I think that's
and kimchi is really, it's a word for pickled vegetables. Kimchi doesn't necessarily mean a specific type of pickled vegetable. It is the catch-all word. I mean, in Korea, there is a kimchi museum, and there's 180 or there's some number of official type of kimchis, but then of course in the home kitchen and family recipes, there's thousands.
Thousands. Every family has.
Right,
their
and so
version.
it's really their word for lacto-fermented pickled vegetables.
Right. You've noted in your book, thank you, that it's also good it's healthy for us. In what way are the fermented foods healthy for us?
They have a couple of good things going on. There's the probiotics, which of course we have a lot in the news and the doctors about, is just getting our gut biomes in good shape. We're starting to find out the microbiology of the gut, and the biome is our mood and our thinking, and it's just so much deeper in how we feel than was ever previously known, and I think we're probably only scratching the surface. And so this food has a natural source of probiotics, so that's the big one. But then the other thing that's pretty exciting is for the vitamins and the absorption, once you ferment them, the lactic acid bacteria sort of pre-digests the starches and some of the things that are harder for us to digest in the first place. And so now the vitamins and minerals are all more bioavailable. And then
from the vegetables.
So we eat that carrot raw, and we eat that carrot fermented, and you're going to get more vitamin C. You're going to get a better absorption rate on your minerals, and interestingly enough, vitamin B12 is also now part of the picture.
Which is kind of magical, because I understand that we can't create our own B12. We have to get it from somebody else. And the little happy bugs there have done the job for us.
Absolutely.
Bless their hearts. Well, you also say that in your book that it's easy to make, get the kids involved. Your kids got involved with doing it with you. And so I would like to ask if you can show our audience how easy it is to make sauerkraut.
Absolutely. Let's make some.
Let's do it.
What does it take to make sauerkraut?
Well, we're going to show you, and it's really easy. So the first thing we're going to do is just prep the cabbage, and this is a cabbage we just bought today from the co-op. And you can see this first outside leaf. I'm going to take that off because it doesn't look that great. And we'll discard that. And then I'm going to save the next leaf or two. And we'll show you what we're going to do with this later. So it's important to pull that one off. Now we're just going to shred. And we cut so many cabbages that we've got a little simple thing to remember, and that's right, and core. So what I'm doing is I've got the core right here, and I'm cutting to the right of it.
Nice sharp knife.
Yep, that's one.
To the right of the core.
To the right of the core, that's two. And now I have got my core right here, see? And all I'm doing now is just a third cut to remove that core. And now I've got 3 cabbages that I'm going to start shredding.
Okay.
So while Christopher's shredding, I want to talk about salt a little bit, because that's often the place where people struggle, where they go wrong, because they think it's the salt that preserves. And it's actually the salt creates an environment for the lactic acid bacteria to grow and produce the lactic acid that is the pH change that actually is
pH means the acidity
the
and
acidity.
alkalinity, so it makes it a little more acid?
Makes it more acidic, and that is the preservation. Anything below 4.6 acidity is going to last a long time.
How long can some fermented vegetables last?
Many of them last just beautifully about a year in the refrigerator. Some of them have higher sugar content and they don't taste as good as long. Some, like peppers, we have a pepper ferment in our refrigerator that just keeps getting better and better, and it's been there for 4 years.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's pretty incredible how long they last.
So you wanted to talk about salt. We got vegetable.
Yeah, so when we were at the market, people would come up to us just heartbroken that their little live food that they'd created was too salty and they couldn't eat it. And they'd always ask, so what can I do? When will the salt go away? The salt doesn't go away. So the best thing you can do is make sure your salt is good and tasty while you're making it. Again, like I said, it's not the salt that preserves, and so you don't need this huge salty, like the sea flavor. You don't need it to be briny. You just need it to be that you can taste the salt, like a chip or something where you taste the salt, you know it's there, but it's not
gonna
overwhelming. That's about, we do a 1.5% salt in our ferments, which is pretty low. Commercial sauerkrauts are sometimes as much as 3 or more percent, and it works. It's tasty. A rule of thumb I like to tell people when they're first learning is if it tastes great, fresh, then it's going to be awesome fermented.
This is new to me. You're just crunching it and it's getting wet.
Yeah, you don't need to beat it. With a pounder you can if you'd like to, but it helps keep a crunchier consistency if you're just kneading it and massaging it.
And so what kind of salt are you using? It's dark and light.
Yeah, this is a Redmond real salt, and it is a rock salt from Utah. And the cool thing about it is it's got a high mineral content, and so the sodium chloride content is a little bit lower than, say, a kosher salt or some of these really salty salts that are refined to the point of being 100% sodium chloride. So you're getting your minerals, and you also are getting a much sweeter flavor instead of that real saltiness. That harsh, right.
Kosher salt. So you're just crunching and scrunching.
I enjoy doing it, actually. This is a good, at the end of the day, you have a little frustrations, you can come and make some sauerkraut, give it a little massage. But what I'm doing is I'm helping it break down those cell walls to release the juices. And you can see even now, as we're going, it's starting to make brine. And
Yeah,
dripping.
you got juice. Wow.
Yeah, it's that quick.
So if you have kids, this is a great way to involve them in the kitchen. You give them some chopped cabbage and a big bowl and put a little salt in it, and then have them do whatever they want to do, and you've got a few minutes to continue to do something else in the kitchen. And the other cool thing is, when kids are part of making it, they're going to be part of watching this food develop and change, and then they're going to enjoy eating it as well, and it's so good for them.
So should we put some in a jar?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I'm going to do first is, sometimes people just fill the jar up. What you want to do is knock out those air pockets as you're doing it. And this is where, if you have big hands and a friend who has little hands, you can hand it off to them.
And you're just pressing it down to just remove the air pockets. I mean, the magic in this that you're so used to, but I realize is we may not all be familiar with, is you're trying to create a condition that's anaerobic, that doesn't let oxygen from the air come in and spoil the vegetables, right?
Absolutely.
So the salt and the juice, the brine, and the vegetables together, you're creating a little bit of like an undersea ocean kind of little world.
Exactly. You talked about earlier about the good guys, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're playing in a little world down here, and what we're doing is we're creating an environment for the good guys, the guys we want, and we're creating an inhospitable environment for the guys we don't want. So the salinity, as it increases, that picks some of the good guys out, And the lactobacillus love that environment. There's 3 different stages they go through. Things like E. coli can't exist in that environment. And now as Kirsten's getting that brine up.
Wow, look at how juicy. I'm astounded how quickly she's squeezing, the juice is coming right on up to the top. Wow.
It's a quick food.
And think of the brine layer. I mean, this is really the most important thing if you're going to be fermenting, is think of your brine layer as your sort of barrier too. It is what keeps your anaerobic environment. And so then the next thing we do is we put this little cabbage leaf
Oh, the one
in
you
there.
saved out. Yeah.
And it's just another little layer. It's like I call it a primary follower, and it's just something that's going over the cabbage that you've shredded to help keep the brine up a little bit and keep, oops, let's get that guy poked in there, and keeping the shreds from floating up. Because what's going to happen is this is staying nicely now, but as the fermentation starts moving and working, you will see little air pockets develop, and it is the CO2 that is being off-gassed from the process. And so you're going to have to weight it down, and what we do often is use, just for this really simple method, there's lots of methods, is a jar filled with water, and you can just keep pressing it. And in the morning, you put this on a plate and cover it, like, you know, with a towel or a napkin or something, just to keep it out of the dust. But you'll see that this will begin to rise up. And as it does, you don't want to lose it, because this brine is your magic liquid to conquer everything and make it tasty. And so as you see this brine rising, you'll see air pockets develop in here, and you'll just slowly push on this, and that will help
just
bring the brine back in and bring those bubbles back up. And with these small batches, and especially when you're beginning, it's really great to keep it on the counter where you can watch it. It's a live process. It's fun to see. It's fun to see in the glass jar. You can see what's going on. You can tell
The little bubbles are coming up and magic.
and when you need to press it back down. Because some people think, oh, well, I make it and I put it away for 3 weeks. And that's not going to work on this small batch, because the brine might all disappear the 3rd day, and then you've got a mushy mess.
And that's
So
it.
you have that's it.
That's it.
So you watch it, you taste it press it down, taste it every few days.
And that's the exciting part too, is that you can really discover where you like the flavor.
Yeah.
Because some people do like it super acidic, and some people prefer it like, you know, I compare it to a half sour pickle, you know, where the flavors are beginning to develop their acidity, yet they're not super sour yet. Yeah. And the crunch is also from the salt. The pectins are hardened by the salt, and that crunch, you know, stays pretty well, but there at the beginning it's still a little bit fresher. And so that's the cool thing about this, is there's so many ways you can kind of tweak and change and experiment and play with the flavor.
In fact, you have a little pet phrase about the brine. What is that?
Well, we have a shred, salt, and submerge is the main things to remember. And we say when it's under the brine, it's fine.
Oh.
Submerging in brine conquers evil every time.
Submerging in brine. The bad guys don't make it. Those are both good.
They're both good. Absolutely.
Whatever it takes to
What I-
remember to keep it under the brine, and then you're in great shape.
You know, what I love in looking at your book is that you have experimented with all kinds of vegetables, all kinds of flavor mixes, relishes and pickles and chutneys, things that I would have never thought of putting this together with that. You know, and I want to say that learning from you that no 2 batches are alike, you're really talking about something that's living.
Oh, for
It's like a
sure.
garden, you know,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it's not a set process.
Yeah, and it's wonderful because you can decide what your favorite recipe is, and you know, depending on the season, the time of year, where the cabbages were grown, or whatever vegetable, burdock root, whatever you're deciding to ferment, you might get a whole different flavor each time. You know, within the same realm, but still that terroir of whatever is going on in your world when you make it.
So I want to draw our attention as we close over here to this wonderful set of little batches of things that you have made, all different kinds of ferments, and ask you, tell me about curtido, because it was one of the favorites that people gave you. One of these is curtido. What's in it?
This is curtido, and it is a real traditional El Salvadorian kraut. It's got onions, garlic, cumin, oregano, and carrots. And it's one of our favorites in the wintertime, especially because it has that flavor of a fresh salsa when you really can't get fresh
Salt. Tomatoes at that
tomatoes
time.
and
All right.
yeah.
Okay.
And then we called this our gateway kraut, and it is a lemon dill kraut, and it's just simply lemon dill and garlic, and it's something that makes people much more friendly towards sauerkraut.
Really, the curtido is very nice. You're right. It does have a sort of hint of salsa. So this has got lemon. Is that right?
Lemon, dill, and garlic. It's a pretty simple kraut, and it's a much more, I feel like the curtido is such a great winter kraut, and this is a much more fresh feeling spring, summer flavor.
It is. It is. It's lighter
Yeah.
in flavor. Well, one of the names you gave yourselves early are fermentistas, right? Fermentistas, which for me has a sense of these are artisans. They are fermentistas, and your goal of having others of us become fermentistas. Thank you for your book, which is a way to help share, and your classes and your website. Any last thoughts from you, fermentistas, that you want people to know?
Just enjoy the process. It's very simple, it's safe, and it's a great way to combine flavors out of the garden and enjoy something new. So just have fun with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm with Kirsten and Christopher Shockey with some of the most delicious fermented foods you can't imagine. You will wish you could taste right through the camera. See you next time.